It's important to be kind to yourself. We often are so used to trying to get the best out of ourselves that we don't accept the fact that by pursuing that, the worst is inevitably going to come out. When you're trying to be a better person in any way in life, it means you're going to have to make decisions. Now, when you make decisions, you inevitably produce outcomes. Now, if you're making decisions that you've never made before, you're going in directions you've never gone in before, it means there are going to be outcomes you've never experienced before. And because you're unsure of the fact of whether or not those decisions are right or wrong, right? You're just doing your best. You're making your decision based upon how you feel best suited to make that decision for whatever outcome you're seeking in life. Now, from that, other things will happen, as I said, that you've never experienced before, both good and bad. I'm starting to realize that literally in the pursuit of trying to make a decision, those good and bad things come up. By making an actual decision, other things start to happen. And even as a result of you making no more decisions, the decisions you already made already have a chain of effects that will affect you in the future. Something that you may or may not have to revisit, that may or may not just pop up in your life unexpectedly. Now, when we are revisited by positive decisions, we never really mind, right? We're like, oh, okay, like this is a positive reminder. But when we're visited by the mistakes that we've made or the missteps, decisions that maybe we should have either held out on or could have made a different decision, when we are visited by the ones that we regret, the regret usually is accompanied by shame. And that shame and regret tends to set in, and it sets into the way that we speak to ourselves. So long story short, what I'm saying is based upon us being imperfect humans, we tend to get on ourselves really bad for that. And over time, you either make decisions with resentment or you stop making decisions at all. You're either resenting the fact that you made those other decisions and you're like regretful, like, man, I could have. And so now you're like pushing and pulling when it's time to make a choice. Or you get really aggressive because you want to erase those choices. And so you do too much and now you're pushing too hard. Or you just become scared and you stop making decisions altogether. Being kind to yourself means that you are aware that as a human, you will not always do what's best. It means you're always trying to do what's best. At least that's a direction I like to live my life in. I like to associate myself with people who are trying to do that because at that point, we're not asking for perfection, we're asking for progression. When you ask for progression from yourself over perfection, you get to then look back at the string of years. You get to look back at what you experience and how you go about it. And then when the new seasons or opportunities come for you to make new decisions, you're able to do that. And you give yourself reason to be proud in that moment because you are embracing the fact that you've gone on a journey where you made different decisions before. And you're also marking a new direction or chapter by making new decisions, by building a new you. See, that's what most people don't tell us, is that we can be a new us at any given moment. So if you forgive yourself, you give yourself an opportunity to be a new you. If you don't forgive yourself, you're really scolding yourself for the you that you aren't anymore, but you're giving yourself the consequences in the present. You're giving the new person that you are old consequences. And so now you're carrying over that old guilt and shame into your new actions. This is why forgiving yourself is so imperative and why not forgiving yourself is really the worst thing you could ever do for your life, because you're not giving yourself room to make new decisions. You are wearing the identity of your mistakes on a daily basis, walking around with the shame and guilt of the old you while the new you is trying to shine and define a new path. I wish I didn't know that process so well, but I do. And as I get older, I realize that the way that I discipline myself, the way that I scold myself or speak to myself is largely based upon how I was influenced as a child, as well as how I perceived my actions as I grew up. You see, we all have a foundation of kind of like a judge and jury system. If you haven't read the 4 Agreements, it goes over it explicitly and very well. It talks about how we are given a process with which to approve or disapprove of our actions. And after a certain age, that system is set into motion automatically. And it's up to you to kind of like revisit that system, recalibrate it, and you set the parameters based upon that system. Otherwise, you'll just continue operating. And so there was a portion of time in my life where I was no longer, it wasn't being dictated to me that I had to follow any certain set of directions, but my brain was still functioning under that process, under those expectations. But I was then responsible as an adult for those decisions. And so although it wasn't me per se that wanted to make those decisions, I was still operating under that system as a person with free will. And so, like I said, I was responsible for that. And so I've had to revisit those areas of those mistakes that I've made because I didn't pick my direction. I didn't pick where I wanted to go. I was following what I thought was set for me based upon other people's approval. So a lot of the reason why I talk about what I talk about, whether it be forgiving yourself or finding your own direction, is because of what I've gone through too. And this is, no one set out to make me think the way they wanted me to think, right? This is just the way the world works. We all grow up in and around people who are like, okay, like, I know what's best for you. I'll set out these parameters. These are the rules to follow. And then we end up on our own path, and we have to figure out what those rules and parameters and directions are for ourselves. And in doing so, we inevitably stumble. We inevitably hit speed bumps. We inevitably hit brick walls. Sometimes we run through them. Sometimes the brick wall defeats us, right? Like, where you're just not sure. That's why I say forgiving yourself is so important, because that's all a part of the journey. I wouldn't take any of that back. I wouldn't want to be raised any differently. I wouldn't want for my life to have gone any different in different scenarios or occasions, because it all contributed to my awareness now. And I love myself now. I appreciate who I am. I don't always like myself. I'm not going to say that, but I do always love myself. I have an unconditional love for myself as a human who is trying to find a purpose, a place, and a direction in this life. Sometimes I'm really in a groove, and sometimes I'm not. And I'm also a person trying to help other people do the same thing. So there's even more of a responsibility that I feel placed on my shoulders to stay in alignment, and also to make sure that I forgive myself for the mistakes that I make while trying to do something that I've never seen done before, by trying to do something that other people haven't seen done before, because it's my vision. It was something that was granted and given to me, right? So there's a certain honor and protection that I have over that, but there's also a responsibility that comes with that. And so I like to balance me forgiving myself, not forgiving myself simply because I want to spare my ego, or because I want to spare how I'm perceived or change how I'm perceived. No, I forgive myself because I understand that I am at my healthiest when I'm not holding unrealistic expectations over my own head, when I am not placing unrealistic expectations on the path or journey that I am pursuing. And I understand that if I've never seen it before, then I'm going to have to do things that I've never done or seen before to figure out exactly how to do it. Do I think that I can do that perfectly in the span of 30 years after having maybe known my purpose for the past like 5 to 10 years? I doubt it. Like I'm shooting off the hip, as they say. I'm trying to figure it out as they go. And so it's helped me to forgive myself, because that stops me from holding over my own head where I am or where I am not, what I have or what I haven't done. It makes me look back at what I have done. And then it also makes me review what I haven't done, right? But like, look, think about the order, right? My old order was what I haven't done and then what I did. And I didn't even realize it until I said it out loud just now, that it has become a healthy function of me to look at what I have done, not always just to pat myself on the back either, but like to sit and just know that, let me fill my tank up. Like if you're going to take a road trip, you fill up your tank. I know I got to go on a road trip every day trying to help people and pursue my own life in a way that is, honorable and, diligent. So I look at what I have done and what I can do, what I have achieved, because then I can acknowledge the fact that, all right, I'm capable of doing something and I have gone this far. And then I look at what I haven't. I'm like, all right, I know you haven't, but you can, because you saw that you did. Now let's get to it. And that just involves not hanging too long on our wins or our celebrations or whatever, just having those, right, to fill yourself up, but also evaluating the room that is in between where you are and where you're trying to go. Having a healthy method of evaluating what you've done, versus where you're trying to go is absolutely necessary, because if you're always looking at your mistakes, always looking at where you aren't, you're going to have a problem, because you're never going to have enough gas for the trip. You're never going to be able to maneuver forward yourself, let alone give somebody else a ride, let alone help empower somebody else. And that's the biggest reason. If I could circle back to it, that'll be something that helps you forgive yourself often. Keep filling up your tank. Make sure you do that as best as you possibly can. And if you come across somebody that needs some gas because they're on the side of the road, you give it to them. The reason for abundance is not to make sure that you have it and you hold it and you always got it. The reason to forgive yourself is not so that you always feel good about yourself. The reason to forgive yourself, the reason to stay full, to stay as an overflowing cup, is to make sure that you can be of service to another individual, another cause, another direction. I've moved in ego-driven pursuits for quite some time, but I tell you what, these last 6 to 12 months, I believe they've been more fluid for me because I have been forgiving myself, and I have been making sure that I overflow my cup with the intent of helping and giving to other individuals. I have to make sure I look out for me first and that I have enough for certain. But when you're looking out for you for the sake of you being good versus looking out for you for the sake of having an overflow to help other individuals, there's a big difference. And I promise you, if you apply that, it'll give you an opportunity to forgive yourself in a new way. Not because you're trying to forgive yourself to feel good about yourself again, but because you're trying to make sure that while you are on this earth, walking down the street, waking up every day, moving about where other humans are, that you have something to give. Having something to give, man, it involves appreciation. It involves direction. It involves purpose. I just want to share that with you today because, man, as I forgive myself more and more each day, I see myself do and be better. Sometimes we feel like we're going to do better and be better, and that's how we forgive ourselves. And I am finding that the more we simply just forgive ourselves up front, we give ourselves freedom and inspiration to do and be more. You can do and be more from wherever you are. So don't ever forget to forgive yourself. Don't ever forget that you are trying as an imperfect human to move in a way that is honorable, in a way that helps other people. I believe in you. Keep going. Keep growing. Just stay humble.